Okay, so the first question is, how did you encounter Christ?
Well, gosh, it goes back. I was raised in a church, right? So, little Southern Baptist church in small town Oklahoma in the 50s. And so I came up with that and received Christ when I was probably about 9. But I really count my conversion, if you will, March 26, 1985. And this is joy. This is joy because that was over 34 years ago. And my life hit bottom. I was tired of things as it was. And I remember all I knew was Southern Baptist at the time. And I was driving around with a job I had that I hated and realized that I was just like tense sitting at a stop sign in a neighborhood. And I was tired of the drugs. I was tired of my life being messed up. And I looked in the phone book and found the closest Baptist church to me and drove there. Never been there in my life. Never saw the pastor before. And he wasn't even there. I sat and waited on him because my life was a mess. And, you know, when you hit bottom, there's nowhere else to look but up. Till you hit bottom, you're looking for an exit. But once you hit bottom, you can only look up. And that's what I had hit. And so he came in later. He listened to me for over an hour. And the first thing he said after I talked was, he said, "Lanny, I want to pray for you and get you delivered from the demon of drugs." And a lot of people think that's a bigger miracle than my deliverance, is that a Southern Baptist pastor would talk in that language. And he did. Laid hands on me, prayed. Instant, total. Like I said, that was over 34 years ago. So I count that as my legitimate, official coming to Christ. I went ahead and got baptized again, even though I was baptized as a child. But I wanted to. So I look at that as that's when my life really, really changed. You know, before, I believe it was valid. I was a child being raised in the church. But that situation had so much impact on me and is responsible for me where I am today. That was the turning point, because that was in March. Well, in Christmas Eve of that same year, that pastor called me into his office, because those were some financially deficient years, to say the least. And he called me into his office on Christmas Eve. I still have the Bible, Thompson Chain Reference Study Bible. And he signed it, slid it across the desk, and said, "You have the gift of teaching, and I want you to start lining yourself up to use it." And so that's why I say that's the point for me. And that's why it brings out so much emotion, is because I know what I was before. The drugs, I knew all that. And that was where it changed totally and sent me up to the direction that I'm still walking out now.
And could you elaborate on your teaching? Because we know you're very active, but to the viewer, what is your teaching and how did you grow in that?
Well, like I said, Brother Phil, it's what he wanted to be called, not pastor, you call him Brother Phil, told me that. And so I began to work first with the children and quickly found out that was not my spot. I love children, but that wasn't me. And there was an older gentleman, older than me at the time, because like I said, this was 34 years ago. And he was working with young adults. Well, he was unhappy. And we got to talking and wound up, it's like we switched places. And I found home, he found home. And so I began to teach just the Bible studies, just what we call Sunday school in those churches. And there's been of course, better be a lot of growth over the years. But one of the first things I had to develop was I thought I had to have all the answers, or I wasn't a teacher if I didn't have all the answers. And that concept is miserable. It's hell, really. It is, because I don't have. That's why now when I teach, the first thing I tell you, don't expect me to have all the answers, because I don't. But we'll try to find them together. And so that put me on the path of developing. And the biggest area of development, the largest condensed area of development came and when I was at Greenwood Christian Center. And I was, at first I wasn't a teacher there, because I came in, and I believe you're to serve wherever you are. So I served wherever I was needed. And eventually I got the opportunity to teach. And I've said it publicly before, and I'll say it again, that Pastor Gary McIntosh gave me the freedom for me to develop my style. I didn't know that you did such a thing. That's what was happening, and I didn't know it was happening. But he gave me the freedom to do that. And I'm convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that most pastors would not have allowed me to develop the way that I did. I remember Pastor Gary used to say before an encounter, when I'd get up and speak, and he said, well, I don't know what Lanny's going to do, but just be ready. I had that kind of freedom, and I'm eternally thankful for that, because those years of doing encounters and in teaching classes there helped me to develop. And that's why I loved it whenever they said, originally when they would do the discipleship classes, each 12 weeks they would change teachers. Well, when I started, Pastor Debbie asked me to help her. It was, we want to keep the same teachers with the class all the way through. And that's a dream come true for a teacher. Because number one is you get to develop more quickly, because you're doing it every week for almost a year. And number two is you get to see the fruit of the effort, because you get to see the people get it, start to change, start to apply it. And that is a tremendous amount of encouragement for someone who loves to teach. And I tell people, just so they'll know, I've never been in any Bible college. I've never been to any college or training. The only criteria, the only justification I have to be able to do what I do is the Holy Spirit and His spiritual gift. That's it. I have nothing else. So I tell people, if you're looking for some kind of credential on paper, I don't have it. But the development that got me to where I am today was that at Greenwood Christian Center, those years that I was there, and that teaching over and over and over again, week after week, for months and months at a time, allows you to develop much more quickly than like our encounters. Even though we did 4 a year, you're talking every 3 months you would teach. But that classroom weekly was just so valuable to me.